We are live streaming.
I'm going to call the finance meeting to order. I guess roll call.
Chairman Patak. Alderman Demas.
Present.
Thompson.
Here.
Reynolds.
Here.
LaVerry. Jepson.
Present.
Herndon.
Here.
Crane.
Get a motion to make a pro tem?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we let Alderman Joe be the pro tem for the finance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Guess I'll hand it off to Finance Director John Duncan.
Thanks, everybody. You guys all have a packet. Any of the members of the public want to grab one, I set them over there. Just tonight is a night where we're going to go through the a draft review of the appropriations ordinance. This is in draft form. It is not complete yet. We are still awaiting on some numbers to come in for certain funds, specifically the TIF fund, for example. We don't have any of those numbers from the TIF administrator yet, who gets them from the county, from the tax levy. So we don't have those revenues yet. We certainly are planning to go through some of the capital expenditures and improvements that we want to make in the TIFs, but the TIF revenues are not a part of that yet. In addition, we are also working through some water and sewer EPA loans to find out where we stand with those, how much we have left. Tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the cash allocation. Your second page, or your first page should be a table of contents, and then you have a cash allocation. I'm going to run through the two cash allocation pages, and then we are going to, we're not going to do this in order. Kevin Fay has another obligation he has to get to. So right after I run through the cash allocations, we will do the street department and then the water and the sewer, so he can be excused, and then we'll go back to the order if that's okay with everybody. So in the cash allocation report, which on the bottom, I tried to do some page numbering. Some of these I got from different places, so that the formatting isn't exactly the same. But the where it should say page 1 is right out of our financial software, and you get this on a monthly basis with the treasurer's report. The treasurer's report that shows you the cash balances in all of the bank accounts by account number and also by investment, and it reconciles to the bottom portion of where the cash belongs. So if we have $15,173,796.22, how that is reconciled with below is the general fund has a positive balance this year, which is probably the best news of the night, of $924,938.30. But each fund, and I won't be too repetitive, each fund shows of that $15 million who owns what portion of it. So we do have a few funds that are in the negative. The playground and rec, or park and rec fund, is in the negative. That account went in the negative when we did the new pool liner, and we haven't dug out of that hole quite yet. It probably will take some time, if not some assistance from a different fund, to get them out. Fund 21 is also in the red. That is the allocation to the public library. So on this is just a timing variance. The public library has about $5.5 million in reserves. They manage their own money. They have their own board. They are a part of the city. We do all of their payroll and accounts payable for them. So what happens is on April 30th, when that month closed, we paid about $18,000. Well, we paid exactly $18,271.23 worth of bills for them, and so then we bill them back for it, and they give us a check. So then that becomes whole again. So that's just a timing variance. Fund 30 is the same way. Fund 30 is the LPAC fund, and the LPAC fund has its own checkbook. We do manage that checkbook for them. We are in control of all of those funds. That fund at the time had written, or that the city had written checks on their behalf of $62,000. We do cut a check back to the city for that on a regular basis. And then the Rotary Park Fund was also in the red to the tune of $465,000. If you remember correctly, we have a grant And this is grant work that is done, and we will receive the OSLID grant revenue in to offset this. And then the city's portion to offset these expenses will come from a transfer from the TIF fund with approval of the TIF administrator. So I just wanted to touch on those funds being the ones that are in the red slightly, and then also you can see the fund balances of all the other funds. So as we go through the appropriations, I would strongly recommend you take a look at this page to see how much the fund has. Because, for example, if the general fund is planning for a deficit in fiscal year 26, they have some reserves to pay for that from. Best practices are that we should have about 6 months worth of reserves. So in the general fund, we should have reserves to the tune of about $5 million, $5 to $6 million in the bank. We obviously don't have that, and you can see from, if you page to page 2, you can see from 2015 to 2025 how we ended each of those years. So if you go across from the general fund, which is the from in 2015, we were 194,000 in the red. You can see how that amount climbed all the way to 2020. The general fund was in its worst fiscal shape. We were about $2 million in the red, and how we've recently, in the last 3 years, have been able to pop back out and actually have a fund reserve balance. Not to the tune that we maybe could have, but obviously a lot of improvements have been made by the reduction in spending or the increase in revenues. So this page gives you a good example. If you go down this page, you can see each fund and how it's fluctuated from 2015 to current. We'll get into the street, water, and sewer next. Before we do that, on this cash allocation, you can see back when we raised rates, and you can see in water and sewer, you can see how we built fund surpluses. We peaked in the water fund, I believe, in 2023 with $5.8 million in reserves, and we peaked in the sewer fund in, I think, 2021, if I'm reading this correctly, with $4.4 million in reserves. We have done projects. That's the whole point of raising these rates, was so we can raise the capital to do the capital improvement projects. So we've done some projects recently, and these fund balances in water and sewer are back down a little bit. So we are continuing these projects through this fiscal year, but my recommendation is after this fiscal year, we should let the fund balances build back up before we take on the next projects, if they're going to be as costly as the most recent ones that we have completed in water and sewer. That being said, if you move to page 12, we'll tackle the street department first. Bear with me for 1 second. And I'm going to, in the interest of time, go over just the things that are, potentially different from previous years. So if you look at the health insurance and if you look at the first few lines of expenses on this, the maintenance of equipment, most of these things are pretty standard from year to year. I'm going to tonight focus on the things that have some higher variances or include items of what I feel are maybe of interest of the council, things that they've discussed before, or specifically vehicle or equipment purchases that we may be requesting to make through the course of the year, so that when you ask me if we budgeted for that, you can go back and maybe make some notes on your sheet and see if we did or did not, and you would be aware. The first item that I want to bring to your attention is maintenance service demolition. So demolition of homes is something that we use street department funds for, or general fund in the street department is where it gets coded to. We still have $25,000 left to finish a grant. And so that's why that is in there if we do demo something. Or is there something you want to share with us? You'll notice tonight I'll have to appeal to my teammates quite a bit to explain. Kurt, do you know what's left to demo?
Yeah, we were just given an extra extended funds to demo. I think it's 716 Buckland Street. That was been on the on Dennis's list, and we were able to acquire that property. And I guess it's in pretty rough shape, so that's the one we're going to be targeting.
And then
That makes it one extra property we're planning on. It's great.
and about halfway down, you'll see. I also did include the GL account codes for these. There is an order or a math to that number. You'll also notice those when you go to approve the monthly or the expenses each meeting. These should correlate to each GL account code number. So you'll see I'll reference those so you know how to find them. But 014040106110 is maintenance service of building, and that we have set at $20,000. It was an increase from the $10,000 last year. We project that we are going to need a new shed covering for the salt shed, and that will be at about $15,000 estimate. And so Kevin is here, and while he's here, if you do have questions on that, please stop me and you can ask those to him. In addition, we have a little bit further down, we have under the vehicle purchase, we do have $300,000 budgeted. We budgeted $200,000 last year. We talked about maybe picking up some used plow trucks. That wasn't as easy or as good of a thought as maybe we had at the time. It didn't work out, and we got some additional feedback from some who have done it that it's maybe not the greatest thing to do. So we did budget $300,000. We didn't buy anything last year. A new one costs roughly, Kevin's estimating around $300,000, and we do want to put one into the budget to, as some of these plow trucks are not only very old but very beat up and starting to get to a point where we need to replace them, so we're not replacing them all at once. So we did put in the budget for one. And then further down toward the end, you'll see pretty much the, everything else is pretty status quo. We did budget $250,000, which is the same as what we budgeted last year for sidewalk repair. This is the Safe Routes program. This is not everything that we're going to spend, but I believe the Safe Routes grant portion was $250,000. Is that correct, Brian?
The grant we got is $200,000, but we said we were going to spend $250,000. The estimates are higher than that because of when the grant was originally awarded to the construction costs today. But
so that Safe Routes to school sidewalks is budgeted for and is in. That's where you're going to find that. So
I have a quick question. With that Safe Routes, the schools, does the school choose the locations?
The school and Catherine Koyak worked together to choose the locations on it, and then it was awarded, I believe, in 19. Just then COVID hit, and they lost they couldn't find their environmental that was submitted. We had our environmental done, and just in the last since December, we started firing that back up. It should be in the August letting, but we have spent no money on it to date other than my time working on it, but no real physical money has been spent on that. So we're hoping to get that in August and then construct it this fall.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
You should give us the present value of the money.
Would be nice.
So we're going to jump to the water fund, which is covered on pages 22 through 24.
No, comments are after.
So if you jump to page 22, you'll see in the water fund, the account codes with Fund 51 is the water code. So anything with a 51 is water, and then the things with 4 numbers after are revenues, and then anything below that with a lot more numbers are the expenses. We have not raised water and sewer rates in some time. We don't anticipate doing that again this year. So I'm anticipating similar revenues in the water fund to what we have brought in. You can see that some years fluctuate a little bit. More so in the commercial and industrial. So I kind of try to take an average of the past 3 years. But you'll see account 513842 I've left blank at this point. This is another example of something that's not complete at this time. This is grant money of the EPA. This is the loan and forgiveness. Last year we had 540,000 budgeted. We did take in a little bit more than that in grant funds for the EPA. We need to find out. We're in the process of finding out how much is left on that we're going to expend, and how much revenue we have. So that revenue source will go into this in the final version. But I just wanted to bring your attention that this isn't complete. This is a draft. We don't have everything yet. But going down to the expenses, on some the things that vary, we have $90,000 built in under maintenance service of equipment. That is factored for 2 new generators at the water towers. A little bit further down from that, the account ending in 6110, maintenance supplies of the building. I have that up to $30,000. We're hoping to add key fobs for all of the public works buildings. We use the key fobs here. It's a great way for us to keep the security of those buildings without having to change keys every time someone leaves. We use that in City Hall for the police department. It worked out great. The fire department has added them, and we are looking to add those in public works. So when we add employees and access, we can also track who's been in and out of certain buildings, as well as not have to issue keys and rekey locks or so forth. So that is budgeted for there. A little bit further down from that, vehicle purchase and equipment. Well, equipment purchases first. We budgeted $10,000 for GIS equipment. Kevin, do you want to elaborate a second on that and what that will do for you and your department?
Yeah, this is a almost like a locator computer that you'd put on a stick or some sort of tripod, and we could do it ourselves as opposed to paying fees to do this. A lot of people had to pay fees to get their system or water system or sewer system on a GIS system. This would be able to, you go to a valve lid or sewer lid in the road, and this is going to sound, it's not how it works. Basically hit a button, it'll pinpoint you within a couple inches of that valve lid. And then as we go through, we could go get our whole system on a computer as opposed to our maps that we have that are pretty old and drawn on now that we've added valves and hydrants. I think that would be a good idea moving forward.
Right next to that, we also budgeted $80,000 for a new service body. That is just to keep, in my understanding, keep in line with our vehicle replacement and something that the water department is in need of. Further down, you'll see, just to bring your attention to something we've already done, but account 51404029. So anything with that 29 generates the water treatment plant. The OOs are just the water department. The 29s, where they have that in there, signifies the water treatment plant. You'll see the 295120 maintenance service of equipment, right underneath that. 5121 maintenance service of the water tower. We have $560,000 budgeted. That uptick is in line with our tower maintenance agreement that we signed with U.S. Water, I believe they go by now. That is so that we properly plan for all of the painting and coating of the water towers, as well as all of the maintenance. I believe we have one being painted this year.
They're going, as soon as Northwest School lets out, they'll be starting on the one by Northwest School. One of the ones that really needs it, so that'll be good. Just an overcoat on that, they will not be blasting it.
And then if we go kind of almost toward the end, the capital improvement projects is budgeted at $560,000. We do have this is where the loan and forgiveness, the EPA loan and forgiveness that we have been working on for some time is I think we're doing about $9 million worth of improvements. If I remember right, Brian, I made that note.
9.4 million, yes.
And we expect maybe 50% forgiveness on that. Is that correct?
Correct.
We also have about $50,000 for a transfer switch and $200,000 for a generator, and then a well stand B for the transfer switch at $30,000, and some SCADA upgrades for $30,000. Those are all budgeted for under this $560,000. Obviously, the $9 million we're making payments on, so the payments are accounted for, but just wanted to bring up that we are receiving quite a bit of infrastructure work for potentially 50% of the price. Any questions on any of those projects? And then also,
Yeah, the generators will be a one-time spend. I mean, we're getting a lot of generators this year, but that should hopefully not be an annual thing, correct? Just maintenance on them, right? Just maintenance, and it's a mandated thing, so it's something we have to protect the water system. If the power goes out, we have to have access and have power supply to treat the water and to pull the water to the treatment plant. So,
and then bringing up one more item toward the end there, that maintenance service of water mains, where we budgeted $150,000. That is for our service agreements with two vendors, both Aclara and Neptune. If everyone remembers, we hired additional manpower and we're doing a meter change out program in the entire city. We're moving away from the Aclara meters to the Neptune, but we're paying two vendors until we get everybody moved. We anticipate it have taken 3 years to get everyone converted to the Neptune meters. The project is going extremely well. We're getting a lot of good feedback from the public. In addition to the software being much easier to navigate and help residents detect leaks, and also for reading and billing purposes, it being pretty easy to navigate as well. So we expect this to decrease in a year as soon as we can get rid of the Aclara support. But just wanted to bring that up and remind everyone that we're completing that project as well.
John, are we done with the meter changes then?
No, I think we're about close to 60 to 70, I would say somewhere in there, percent complete. It has gone very well. We're moving pretty quickly through, a little bit quicker than we thought we would through them. But we're not quite complete, and it's going to at least take another year.
Okay.
So then we'll move into the wastewater fund. The wastewater fund can be found under our sewer fund on pages 25 through 27. Again, in the wastewater fund, you'll see in the revenue, and the third line down, that is incomplete at this point because we're still calculating how much of the work has been done on the EPA loan and forgiveness and how much revenue that's yet to generate. Again, we anticipate rates staying the same this year. We typically, the ordinance has us from February to February raising them. So if we did decide to do anything to rates, it wouldn't. We could make it effective whenever we want, but I would recommend doing it in line with the February ordinance. And if that's the case, you're only 2 months in. So, but at this point, we're able to manage what we have under the current rates. So I'm anticipating pretty much revenues to be around the same. Getting into the expenses, maybe about 15 or 20 down. You'll see the maintenance service of sewer at $1.5 million. That is a bulk of the projects that we'll be doing in the sewer department, which include televising and cleaning to the tune of about $500,000, an aluminum lining for about $50,000, sewer lining for $250,000, the Route 6 bridge, that pipe collapse, We're at this point throwing a dart at the number around 400,000. We also are going to do some improvements to uh, the piping that goes over the 39 bridge, and we threw a dart at that at 25,000. And then we have the wall failure that we have been discussing for quite some time, still unfixed at the new treatment plant to deal with. We're estimating that to be about $100,000 to $150,000 fix, and then we have a gate replacement of $130,000. Those are all things that I cannot explain very well, so I have Kevin and Brian here if they want to comment while they're both present on any of those projects. If you want to chime in.
I'll tackle anything you want me to discuss. As far as the sewer cleaning, you're aware if you remember, we did the south half of Ward 2. With that 500,000, I want to finish Ward 2, do Ward 3, and hopefully Ward 4 west of the Little Vermilion. That's kind of the estimate I put together based on the footage of sewer that we have in size. If we stay with the same contractor that we use, we can extend his contract. That's kind of where I was looking at trying to get that done. So then basically all we have is Ward 1 and the east part, which is fairly new, to look at and to finish over the next couple years. The sewer lining, we've talked with NCICG about possibly going after a DCO grant to line any of the sewers that we've found that have failed, or not failed, but they are in distress and they need to be lined. So we're looking at those. I'm going through the videos now. I've identified a few blocks that probably need more of an expert opinion, but I'm at least finding ones that I can send and have them looked at. What other things were on there, John?
We can move down because I think we do have a service body here as well on the truck or vehicle purchases at 80,000, and then you'll see that we have some capital improvement projects and street repairs are the next two things. They're almost toward the end. Maybe you can talk about the capital improvement projects of the $3.8 million in the IEPA, the loan and forgiveness. Again, is that another 50% that you're anticipating?
Well, probably won't be 50%. Water is more critical than sewer as EPA looks at it.
So we might be
probably in a 30 to 40%.
30 to 40% forgiveness on that.
Going back to that 1.5 million, you also had mentioned about the retaining wall.
Yes.
I have everything ready to go for bid. We did hire a structural engineer to look at the different types of walls that we could replace that with to reduce the cost. So that should be out to bid. I'm hoping in the next month or so. I'm waiting on our structural engineer to give us that wall design. Okay, back to the
capital improvement projects.
Capital improvement projects.
I have it written down as a lagoon cleaning, a grit chamber, SCADA disinfection building. Is that
right? The lagoon, if you recall, a couple years ago, we had a company come in and they did some. They had their little boat go over and do some sonar and determine what our sludge thickness was and how many years we have left. And we're running out of room on that sludge lagoon. So that is in our EPA loan request. The chlorine building right now is Kevin, how would you say it's the chlorine in the chlorine contact building on the excess flow that it requires a lot of hands-on, and we might want to make it more automated with a safer chlorine use. Right now, it's an old system and it can be upgraded, and we need to have SCADA run to that and work. And I think in addition to that, it was a SCADA upgrade for our wastewater, which included our lift stations and some other work with that. What was the other? There was one other item in that loan.
The disinfection building,
That's where we're going to add additional chlorine.
grit chamber.
Oh, the grit chamber. One of the issues that we have at the south plant is being a combined system. If we have a water main leak or a lot of sands and gravels on the roadway and they go into our sewer system, they can affect the wastewater plant. If we have a flush where it all goes down to the plant. So we worked with the engineer Donahue and Associates to come up with basically a large manhole with a basin that will collect all that grit before it gets into the system that we can go up to with our vac truck and vac it out. So we don't having to work with wheelbarrows inside the water or the wastewater plant. So they're working on that.
So the only other thing I have in the wastewater or sewer fund is right above that, the $200,000 in street repair. We talked about $180,000 being allocated to First Street to do some sewer work in First Street. Brian, you want to touch base on that real quick?
Well, there's some the large sewer that is under First Street will need to have some either replacement or lining done. That hasn't been determined yet. I want to finish cleaning First Street, the main sewer, and then the other part of that was the potential for having to do something from Buckland down to the Creve Coeur. We need to replace that roadway, and if you recall, when they did the cleanup for Ameren down there for the old gasification plant, that there were many trucks going over that, and we negotiated a fund for repair of the roadways for the work that they did, and part of that is that money.
Okay, before I get Kevin out here, there's only one other thing that pertains to him in the general fund. I did budget a little bit of money for a land purchase and wanted him to chat a little bit about potentially grabbing some additional land up by the Public Works building to be able to park or have other vehicles or equipment in.
Yeah, there's a piece of property. It'd be directly west of our Public Works garage. Is as of right now sitting vacant. It was an old Ryder trucking repair garage. Purchasing this would extend our, I guess you could call, campus of our Public Works. Be able to store our leaf vacs inside, more of a storage building, not necessarily a Public Works, but would be able to store our when we take our plows off in the summertime. We could store them inside as opposed to outside where they rust and hose deteriorate. Just a thought, it'd give us the whole property as opposed to sharing this neighbor building with us. It sits vacant as of now. Ryder's been out for, I think, a year and a half.
Does anybody have any questions for Kevin before we cut him loose? Kevin, what's the price for that?
I'm not entirely sure. I know it was purchased. I did a little research. It was purchased in 2019, I think, for $130,000. It's a bare bones building, bathroom. I don't think there'd be really any needs for remodeling. It'd just be inside storage. So our leaf vacs and like our tractor. Yeah. Correct.
We wouldn't need locker rooms and.
No, we wouldn't need new bathrooms.
Bathrooms.
It sits empty. It's kind of a shared lot, if you will, because we have to use that road from the west to get to our garage. It goes right next to the building. but just a thought as it sits vacant.
And
So-
it gives a lot of outside storage too.
and it gives us the entire lot. And right now we have about half that lot for storage, so it's kind of crowded towards the building. It would just give us that entire property for storage.
And the property's connected to the current Public Works building property?
Yeah, it's basically like a big gravel lot. As you go down the road there in between, it'd be kind of by Ivar. If you turn by Ivar, it's a long gravel road. It's technically the city's garage's address is Industrial Drive, but we do have the entrance off 351 as well. But it's all looks like one property, but it's split pretty much in half.
Okay.
When we did buy the city garage there, we had to go through getting an easement through that property or verifying we had that easement to get to the back side of that building. So it is something we've worked with in that lot.
Thank you, Kevin. The only other thing that I will add before we wrap up, going back to the sewer department, is you'll notice if we do all those things, the sewer department's the one I have the most concern with, because if our revenue stays the same and we do all these capital improvement projects and maintenance projects, we're forecasted to be about $1.5 million over our expenditures over our revenues. If you refer back to your cash allocation report, we have about nearly 1.3 million, $1,293,631 in reserves in the sewer fund that could handle most of that, but then that would bring that fund to a negative for maybe what would be hopefully a brief period of time, or we maybe don't do some of the sewer projects, so we don't have that deficit. But then my suggestion after that, whether we do them all or don't, whether we go slightly in the red in that fund or not, that we allow some time for reserves to build back up before we get on some of the bigger capital improvement projects that we needed. But again, we're doing $4 million worth of work. You know, these projects are pretty significant. We're getting a lot done for a very reduced rate. You know, whether we get some 30 or 40% EPA forgiveness on the loan, you know, and then we'll pay through that and let our fund balances build back up again.
And understand the capital improvement programs that we're working on are ones that we've kind of looked at doing for quite a few years, and we're finally getting to them. I mean, we're getting them done. So I really don't anticipate on the sewer side much additional. We're pretty much, wouldn't you say, Kevin? I mean, this should put us in a position where we won't have to do anything major for the next, foreseeable future. So.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. If you need to go.
Thank you, guys.
We will pick up with the general fund. We'll try to go in order now. The general fund revenue on pages 3 and 4. Just want to comment a couple things on the revenue side, the things that are a little bit different than normal. There was a change in the law in personal property replacement tax and sales tax, so how they collect. So what we saw was online orders being taxed at the destination and giving a sales tax instead of replacement tax. It used to be, for a while, it went into the replacement tax and distributed to on a per population means throughout the state of Illinois. So we saw an increase in actual in 2023 and 2024 in its 013440 replacement tax. You saw those numbers go up pretty big, and then they went down. And that's because now these places, say for example, we have one in LaSalle, J.C. Whitney, that does a lot of online ordering. So for a couple years, we lost that revenue. We lost the sales tax from Whitney because it was going to where the person ordered from. Well, now the state of Illinois in January of this year changed that back to the way it used to be. So we're not getting the people from LaSalle's Amazon orders, but we are getting all of J.C. Whitney's. So luckily we lost a revenue source, gained the Amazons, and then it's flipped back, and then we gained Whitney, but lost all the destination Amazons to LaSalle. And as a result, I believe it's going to be a net positive to the tune of about $100,000 between those. But you'll see that the replacement tax is going to go down and the sales tax is going to go up. And I think that there's been some recent attention as to what's happening with sales tax, in certain places, and certain places are up and how come. And this is a logical explanation for the city of LaSalle as to why it went up a little bit, is because we've gained back some of the online orders for places that we have in LaSalle. 013810 interest income. So we've done some really smart investing in CDs. I know we started that a couple of years ago, but you can see the 2025 actual. We made $524,000 in investment income. So we projected it at 400 for this year because CD rates have dropped a little bit recently, and I'd rather budget fiscally conservative. And if we exceed the $400,000, great. But this is due to the interest rates of CDs being up over the past few years and us taking advantage of that. I do ladder all those CDs, as you guys know. I try to have one come due about every month. I don't take a CD out longer than 3 years or 36 months because any administration can come in and have those funds be made available to them if they have something that they want to spend them on. So I don't want to lock money up more than any one term of a mayor. And so all those CDs will rotate in that type of term, and we have done really well with investment income. So that's been huge for us. There's nothing else really significant on the income side of things. I will point out that that we project total general fund revenue to be about a little over $11 million. So moving forward to the miscellaneous general fund. This is something that's incomplete. Most of the ones missing from here are property tax rebates on homes that we annexed in to get to be part of a TIF. So these tax refunds are for per annexation agreements. And again, this is missing information right now from the county on the property taxes. We should have that pretty soon, and obviously this will be in the final draft. None of these amounts are astronomical or anything major to discuss. You'll see the $125,000 to transfer to Park and Rec. That is Park and Rec's portion of the sales tax, and we transfer that out every year since the referendum was passed back in like 2005 or 6. Or if Doc was here, he could tell us the exact year. So moving on, we're just going to keep going in order in the expenses of the general fund. The mayor's office. The only real significant thing to report or increase is the regular salaries of the clerical staff increased a little bit to accommodate for a new part-time employee in the mayor's office. That part-time employee is split between the mayor's office and Brent's office. That person is there to handle some license renewals and answer phones and tackle a lot of the low-hanging fruit in those offices. At the same time, be a forward-facing person and help out members of the public when they come in with questions. So we do have a new part-time employee, and that increase is due to that being split between the mayor's office and Brent's office, community development. City Council, there's nothing new in this fund or in this to report. Finance office, nothing new or significant or too much different. Pretty much most of the increases in these funds where I have nothing new is due to salary and the cost of labor or cost of benefits increases that have gone up over time. But nothing new or significant or no purchases from the finance office. City clerk, same way. I did increase the publishing amount slightly, or that would be pretty much similar to other years. And the city clerk's office is publishing everything that needs to be published in the city that requires publication. The treasurer is exactly the same. It's a pretty simple fund to follow. There's a salary for the elected official, and then also dues. Dues in everyone's category are to the IML. We purchase our property liability and workers' compensation through the IML RMA, and we are required to be members of the IML to do that. So each department gets assessed its portion of the dues. The city attorney budget went up slightly. We're anticipating that to be a little bit higher for a couple reasons. Just to increase usage, in addition to an increase for a company called Lexapro, which you will hear more about from Chief Janik. We intend or are hoping to use them for passing new policies for his department. So that's something that they specialize in, and you will hear more about that from Chief Janik. In economic development, just want to touch on not necessarily increases, but memberships and so forth, and things that we have going in economic development. So about halfway down, the other professional services set at 43,000. Of that 43,000, we have budgeted 26,000 to global site location, $2,000 for printing and marketing, and then we have a projected $15,000 projected for a grocery study. That is something that Kurt was interested in doing. Again, it would still need approval from the city council, but that is something that he had asked me to budget for. And he's here and obviously can elaborate on those, as well as the subscriptions membership of the 28,000, which is the same as it was last year, but that's NCICG, IVAC, NCIEDC, and the Heritage Corridor. The NCICG is a $3,000 membership. IVAC is $3,000. The NCIEDC is $13,000, and the Heritage Corridor is $9,000. So those are all things that we currently participate in, as well as the other professional services of the potential grocery study and the global site location. Kurt, if you want to touch on those things.
Anything in specifically? Memberships? Okay. So, well, we just signed on for our second year to approve the membership with Global Site Industries. Through that, we're going to be able to split the membership into not only just the manufacturing industrial side, but also a retail component. And the CEO was here. He studied our sites and felt very confident about doing that, and was able to put together a deal for us, and that's what you had approved. So in a year from now, we'll see where we're at. I feel pretty confident about our membership with them, and being optimistic about landing something through them. So we can discuss more about that later. The other side of it is the Heritage Corridor. Heritage Corridor is the local CBB for tourism within our region. There are middleman, so to speak, between us and the state of Illinois. We use them for a lot of advisement and access to tourism grants that are available. Recently, we've been able to take advantage of two grants, one of them being a marketing partnership grant that accomplished our new tourism website and flyers. I'm able to use those as a marketing tool to any industrial manufacturing companies looking to expand or relocate. It's a great landing site for that, and the flyers help as a take-home, leave-behind piece. And then we've also had acquired the event grant recently. So those are other items besides just marketing opportunities that we can get for free. We get advertised in their guide, and that's shipped all over the place. They take them even over to Europe. when they're looking to get fam tours and such. And with I&M Canal, the boat and everything, it's a very prominent piece to have. And then the others are pretty self-explanatory with NCI EDC and IVAC, two local economic development organizations within our region. One being the chamber, and the other one is more the regional economic development, who we work through for site verification and RFIs for companies. So it just reinstates and helps backfill kind of what I do in my department, trying to keep things positive and moving forward to new potential businesses.
Okay, moving on to community development. Everything is forecasted to be about the same in there. The only other thing there to bring to your attention is the half of the part-time employer that was added to the mayor's office is split with community development. So that's the reason for the larger increase in the regular salaries. Moving on to the police department. Be about page 10. Just as we do every year, about the fourth one down, you'll see the contribution to the police pension now sitting at $2.1 million. That was already approved in the tax levy. That is levied for, so every bit of it goes right into the police pension. So huge amount. I mean, I remember back in, I believe in 2006 to 2009, us contributing about $300,000 a year, and now we're at 2.1 million. So huge amount. We have to get 90% funded by 2040. We're well on pace. We're getting there, but yeah, obviously we're making some pretty significant and huge contributions to the pension. Just it's one of the things that is probably if you think about the police pension contribution in compared to the full general fund, I mean that's $2 million out of the $12 million that we bring in revenue. So that's a huge expense. Under the operating expenses, we have $20,000 built in for some flock cameras and iCrime software and a company called ID Networks. That's something that Mike obviously isn't here to explain, but equipment that they use. Under equipment purchase, we have $50,000. Last year's budget was $120,000. We got quite a few of the things that we anticipated getting. We still have a few things left to purchase. So the $50,000 is for a receiver at LP, which we anticipate costing about $10,000, and then we're leasing tasers to the tune of about $10,000. So we did budget $55,000 for one new vehicle. If he needs another one, he has used his drug fund for a purchase for a vehicle from time to time, and he may do that, or he may just be fine with one new vehicle this year. Salaries have gone up in $0140200140. That is with the promotion of Ray Gatza. Oh, I'm sorry. This is with the chief. This is the chief's salary category, and because Mike is the retirement age, we are financially anticipating or preparing for potentially a retirement. If that occurs, there's obviously some sick time that he's entitled to per the contract, in addition to having to carry two chiefs on during a training period, is the reason for a potential increase in this category. Mike is planning for retirement sometime. That is not final yet, and we don't have a date, but as we financially prepare for that, that is on the agenda this year. Moving on to the fire department. As everyone knows, we are currently testing for positions. We are adding positions on to replace a part-time person. We have a new requirement for the fire department as we negotiated and approved that contract. some time back to have the firemen be paramedics or fire medics. So as we add these 2 new employees, most of the cost increases in the fire department, in the health insurance, and also in the salaries are due to those new employees. We also highlighting a $150,000 potential expense. We applied for an AFG grant. Am I saying that right, Jerry? An AFG grant, which would be about $135,000, and that was also accounted for in the revenue side. So if we don't get the grant, we may not have the expense, but those things will offset. And then in terms of equipment, we have a vehicle purchase of $134,000. That is simply an annual payment for the new engine that we have ordered 2 years ago. Last year. We don't have it yet. Obviously, it's still being manufactured, and we have to we'll start paying on it this year, this fiscal year, and that's something we anticipated. Remember when the delivery was on that, Jerry?
Should be summer of 2028.
Summer of
Tentative 2028.
Okay. So that kind of concludes the changes in the fire department. Next page, street department. We've already gone through that. Engineering is pretty status quo. Nothing really new to report there. Engineering is not totally complete. I'm still calculating something on the health insurance there in terms of where the allocation is, so that has to be plugged in. City Hall building, really status quo except for the capital improvements of the building. Obviously, everyone knows that we received some grant money. We did some tuck pointing and a roof replacement with that grant money. That's why it was higher in other years. I did put $300,000 into the budget this year. We are exploring the bathrooms on the police department side. Those lobby bathrooms are in serious need of remodeling. We have some plumbing issues on a daily basis in the bathrooms. The urinals are very, very, very old. The women's bathroom is in pretty rough shape as well. We talked about a single user bathroom, remodeling that to a single user bathroom and updating that, as well as potentially some improvements to securing the lobby. Currently, we have the blue phone outside. We use that blue phone from time to time because if the records clerk is not here or sick, that lobby gets locked because it can't be secured. But people gain access from our side, and they can be in the building without any type of security. So we will be exploring or have explored with Mike Kometz some potential changes to improve the lobby. We would like certain portions of the lobby to have potentially 24-hour access to the public with maybe some payment machine so people can pay their water bill. In a machine or something. They make machines now that are so that you can pay right to the machine. And we would be able to have that instead of maybe the drop box, in addition to having some access to things that are being posted in a lobby area, that we can have a smaller secured lobby and potentially making those changes. So we may be revisiting that as the year goes and have something for you in terms of estimated pricing on it. Right now, I just took threw a dart at a number, so we'll see what that may lead to. Building inspector, pretty much status quo, almost exactly the same as last year. We do have a part-time building inspector. That's all it is, part-time. So it's not a huge expense. Superintendent of Public Works isn't very big for us either. Currently, that role is filled with by Kevin, who's working also as a union water foreman, and he's duplicating that role. So this isn't anything that we anticipate any major changes at this point too. And then after that, you'll see we have a miscellaneous. I'd like to talk about some things in here. We have Fund 01-40601-489130, Community Relations. This, we have a lot of account categories called Community Relations. This is the Community Relations we use for RIP grants. I did increase that to $210,000 simply because we have RIP grants anticipated of about $150,000 in the budget, in addition to the county RIP grant that we still have hanging with $60,000 that's left in there. Is that correct, Kurt, on the amount? So adding those two together at $210,000, $60,000 of that would be reimbursable from the county, and $150,000 would be ours if we approved $150,000 worth of grants. The mayor asked me to add the next one under there for $8,000. He would like to consider a payroll grant. That's something he talked about during the election process of giving some downtown businesses maybe a payroll grant to subsidize some labor on a Saturday or after hours once a month, or to do something that they may generate some additional income in, and if that gets them on their feet to being open later or staying open on weekends, that is where we budgeted for that. Last year we budgeted $780,000 in expenses in the CDAP grant. That's the Housing Rehabilitation Grant. What Kurt had told me this year and what we learned is that is being paid for directly by them. So I didn't budget anything for it this year, so that's why it went to zero. They're opening an account and paying for those expenses themselves and managing the funds, so we do not have to do those. That's why that is out of the budget, but it's still happening. And then we have $50,000 budgeted to update the comprehensive plan. If we do anything in terms of updating the comprehensive plan. And again, I think I was talking to Alderman Jepson prior to the meeting. If it's not to say that we're going to do all these things. Some of these things we anticipate coming to you, the aldermen, as they come up, and if we still feel that they're a priority or have the manpower or maybe grant revenue to offset doing it, we would do these things. But we did put that in the budget. A few more lines down. 01-40603-009130 Community Relations. This account is the one that's used when we pay for fireworks for events, or flowers for the downtown, or donations to charity. We talked a lot this last fiscal year when charitable requests would occur, how we handle that. I did increase the budget from $100,000 to $110,000, so you could see what it looked like with a little more room in there. This is something that I would strongly suggest the council discuss over the course of the next few meetings before we approve the final ordinance, so we know what charities that you would like to contribute to. I can get you a list of what we've spent in this fund, what charities we currently contributed to, such as IVAC. Some people look at that as a charitable contribution. Others look at it as they're providing a service to the city, because instead of calling the police department to remove an animal, we use them. So those are all items that are expended for out of this account category. Wanted to bring that to your attention, and then ask you guys for additional direction in terms of what at least agree upon an amount that you want me to bake in, and you can have the debate as the year goes as to what will or won't go in there.
Could you email that list of what we've done maybe the last 2 years and who we gave it to, so that we have it prior to the next council?
Yeah, and also any type of advertising we do comes out of here. So radio promotional things are also baked into this account. So I can get you a list of that, and so you can see what we have in there, and then see what you all want to do in terms of charitable donations. Just so we're on the same page going into the fiscal year, whether we budgeted for it or didn't budget for it. I'm sure a lot of worthwhile causes will arise, and just to plan ahead. if you want to leave some in there, a specific amount for things that might arise, that's an idea on how to tackle that as well. But just want to put that in front of you so you can give me direction as to how you want me to account for it.
And I'd like to remind the council that this is the time right now, what he's talking about. We put the food pantry on the back burner till this came out. So we really need to get serious on setting a cap or what we're gonna do. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so also a few lines down from there, you'll see that we have a potential land purchase. Again, throwing a dart at an amount if you guys were interested in that piece of property by the current Public Works building. He did say that they, in 2018 or 19, they paid substantially less. Obviously, if we got it for less, that would be great. I'm not saying that we pay this amount. I just put an amount in to plug in a round number, and I also didn't know what type of work needed to be done in there. Kevin has shared that it didn't really need any, but just wanted to be on the high side as we estimated.
What line was that, John?
0140702008512. It's the second to last number that I budgeted for. It's above the $10,000 on the streets. It's for striping. You can see the net effect if we do all of the things that we say we want to do in the general fund. We would lose $739,000. If you refer back to the cash allocation we have in reserves, $924,000. So you would still be in the green in the general fund if you did all of these things. But again, you wouldn't have the cash reserves recommended. So again, we do these things. Joe asked in a few meetings back about curbs and sidewalks and so forth as we do streets. Something to consider as well too, if you want to do something like that as we're going through and doing the streets, to be proactive about it and get with Brian on what streets we're going to do. And if we do that, have an estimate. And maybe those things you'll find more worthwhile than one of the other things. That's entirely your decision as a city council. You give me that direction, I will take it and plug those numbers in. That is, if you think that that's a higher priority than something else that was mentioned, obviously your dollar can only be spent one way for certain things. And you see what we have in terms of income. And as ideas get born and discussed during the course of the year, if it's a priority over something else, that's fine. We just need that direction in terms of what you might think. And again, that's why this is a draft, and that's why we have this discussion today, is to say, these are the things that I feel are coming after talking to the department heads and what they put as a priority. If you feel something is a different priority, now's your chance to express it, get feedback from your constituents, and to maybe agree or disagree, but at least give me some direction on how to move forward with that. Moving on, and the rest of this shouldn't take us too much longer. The audit fund is pretty status quo. This is just used to pay for the annual audit. That's coming up because we're currently in the process of closing the books of the current fiscal year. We'll have the audit complete sometime in June, and we usually get those numbers back in sometime around September. So the garbage fund, the only thing that I would bring to your attention is I continued budgeting $10,000 for an e-waste event. We had one back in 24. We didn't think we would have one in 25, but if we think we want to have one in 26, which is this fiscal year, I put $10,000 in there and we can work towards some e-waste recycling week. Motor fuel tax is pretty status quo. That's its own fund. We have, if you look at the cash allocation report, you won't see Fund 15 or motor fuel tax in there. This is a fund that has its own checking account. We're required to not commingle this money with anything else. So if you look on the treasurer's report that I give you every month, it tells you the balance of the MFT account. The MFT account, this year we're planning on expending $450,000 from it, which is the very last line item. What we're doing the 2025 MFT program, which accounts for $400,000. And then we have an outstanding Street and some outstanding on Charter Street to the tune, both of those added up to $50,000 from last year's project. So that is what makes up the $450,000 in the MFT expenditure.
Yeah, we get invoiced. IDOT will invoice us those. That's why we can't just pay those off. They send us an invoice based on the final cost.
IMRF is pretty self-explanatory. We did have a decrease in the replacement tax revenue. We were using the replacement tax revenue for some of these smaller funds. The IMRF fund, again, is projected to lose $61,000. That's Fund 16. But if you look at Fund 16, we have $198,000 in reserve. So I'm okay with spending this down a little bit before we allocate additional general fund revenues to make up for the difference in the IMRF fund. So because of the increase we had in replacement tax revenue in previous fiscal years, we don't need to transfer much money into the IMRF to offset that this year. Park and Rec is the next fund we'll talk about. The Park and Rec fund, the only thing that's really different is the equipment purchase. I put in $19,000. I believe Linda Kasich will be at the next finance meeting. She is looking at a new Gator or ATV. The one we have is aged and pretty beat up. This is something that they use. This is a piece of equipment they use on a pretty regular basis. So she looked at a couple different models, like a John Deere and maybe I don't remember the other model, but she got some bids for those. She's going to share those with you. Again, Fund 17, I'm not saying is in trouble, but is probably in the biggest account that is in the red, and it's difficult. It is in balance, you can see this year, where our revenues and expenses offset each other, so we don't plan to go any deeper. But at some point, we need to dig our way out of the $338,000 that we are currently in the red on due to the pool liner. Crossing Guard Fund, Fund 18 is projected to have a slight loss, again, mostly due to the replacement tax revenue being down. And again, that Fund 18 currently has $60,000 in surplus in it, sufficient to handle the $7,000 loss that's projected in that fund. Very similar with Fund 19, Social Security. This fund, again, had a decrease in the replacement tax revenue, and we had some increases in Social Security contributions due to the increase in employment. This fund, where it's different from the other funds, is this $82,000 is not or won't be sustained by the current fund balance. My suggestion is next year that this fund gets a bigger piece of the replacement tax revenue. I'll probably allocate more money in replacement tax revenue to offset this fund and to bring it back if it has any type of loss this year that puts that account in the red. Buildings and Grounds Fund 20, which I believe is on page 4. 18? Page 18, yep. So thank you. Page 18. This fund here doesn't have really too much to report. This is a fund that we use to supplement park operations. So when the park board was established, the park and its revenue sources have certain responsibilities, and then our buildings and grounds funds has certain responsibilities. So for example, the buildings and grounds funds takes care of all of the utility cost for the park. So lighting and so forth that's in the parks aren't paid for by the park fund. They're paid for by the buildings and grounds fund. Not just the parks, but City Hall and other properties as well that the city has are in this fund and make up this fund. So when the park board was established, there's an agreement that, for example, we would pay for the vehicle supplied, and we would service the vehicle supplied to the park department. So that's why you see some vehicle maintenance and so forth in this fund.
John, why did the replacement tax revenue go from 150 to 90,000?
So the replacement tax revenue is the revenue that dropped because of the change in the way Illinois distributed sales tax. For a while, Amazon orders for a couple years were destination related, and then the other instead of replacement tax. So we're getting that back in sales tax, so we can, when these funds, hurt a little bit, we can transfer some of the sales tax revenue in from the general fund. The library fund is the next fund to discuss. The library board came up with these numbers. Joe can probably speak to them better than me right now. I did input them for your viewing. The library fund is projected to lose $175,000. You can see over the actual in 2022, 2023, and 2024, the library fund actually was at a surplus of $881,000 in 22, and 23 1.1, and in 24 1.2. One of their funding sources, the donation, has now expired, and so the library fund currently has in reserves about $5.5 million, which is great, and that gives us some long-term sustainability of the library, so it can absorb the $175,000 loss that it's projected to have. And we are doing things like we're taking active steps to increase the property tax levy to get the library an amount of money that it has to be able to stay in balance or to sustain itself. I think we're doing a really good job. I think that the fact that we're only projected to lose $175,000 this year when it has $5.5 million in reserves is fine, and we'll continue on the path of getting that back so that we're not losing money and the library having some reserves to be able to sustain for a long time. Anybody have any questions for Alderman Jepson, being our library representative?
Why did 20?
Joe, with that 5.5 million, do they have it in CDs?
We do CDRs and CDs. We followed the city,
Right.
and we're looking at some decent interest revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Why the 20% jump in salaries over the other years? It's a huge jump.
Well, we had pretty much our entire staff retire in the past 18 months. We've hired a bunch of new people. Our director is getting her master's degree, so we're increasing salaries there. And we have more employees.
Got it.
Before it was kind of just like one employee downstairs, two employees. Or it's
Okay, that explains it. You hired more people.
Moving on to the ambulance fund, page 20. The ambulance fund, as everyone knows, the reason why we're adding more people to the fire department is because we've struggled with maintaining contract employees with the ambulance, as well as part-timers for us. In that struggle, we weren't able to take on a significant amount of transfer opportunities, so the revenues of the ambulance suffered a little bit. You can see I projected $950,000 worth of transfers because in 25, because the year before we did 987,000. So I thought I was being conservative by budgeting 950, but we only did 850,000. Some of that is because of some of that revenue was lost because of the transfers that we weren't able to do, and with the low manpower situation. So we are in the process of addressing that and hiring to get those positions in house and not dependent on contract employees, as each and every one of us has discussed. So we're hoping that increases a little bit. I didn't take it back to the 950. Just trying to conservatively go up there because we're not fully staffed yet either. So that's where that stands. And then in addition, almost to the very bottom of the ambulance fund, a couple things that we budgeted for: $60,000 in equipment purchase. We are looking at a new cot to the tune of $30,000 for one of the ambulances. And then the $300,000 in the vehicle purchase is buying a new ambulance. We are anticipating buying or paying cash for that, because if you look at the ambulance fund back on your cash allocation report, Fund 23, that does have $844,000 in it. So us paying interest on something that we can afford cash on didn't seem to make a whole bunch of sense. We can also revisit it depending on what interest rate we're quoted based and gauge that versus what we're making on those ambulance revenues off of CD. So we may call an audible on this at the time, depending on where those numbers lie, but we're going to be smart about it. So we do need a new ambulance, and that is budgeted for in this appropriations. Any questions for Jerry and the ambulance? So the next fund, Fund 30, we added in fiscal year 25. The LPAC used to have its own checking account. When it had its own checking account, we still managed that checking account. It was me and or the mayor signing the checks that went out. It was just a fund that started out small, and as it grew, we brought it into our accounting software. And so in doing so, we took some stabs at some of these numbers. You'll see that this is another fund that is incomplete at this time. You'll see some things that aren't filled out toward the end. I know that we've discussed recently not participating or doing Celebrate LaSalle, the Celebrate LaSalle event, that we are anticipating rolling out a new event closer to the kickoff of the winter season. We are in the process of looking into all of those costs, and that will be included. We did receive a grant, a tourism grant to the tune of $50,000, $49,000 and change, I believe, Kurt, right? So we did receive a grant to have that event, and we are in the process of costing everything out. And by the time this is final, I will have those numbers plugged in. But I wanted to be transparent about this tonight in terms of that's why everything with 34,000,007, which you'll see as Run Run Rudolph, the winter event bar, music and advertising, and amusement expenses. I do have an amusement expense plugged in because that instead of having a carnival, we do have prices for those amusement events. So some of that would be a synthetic ice skating rink that would be brought into the downtown for people to ice skate on, and also some bouncy type, large Frosty the Snowman, and our entire staff is working very hard on this right now. And as we dial in costs, we'll be ready to roll this out to the council. The Rotary Park Fund is the next fund. And again, this was the OSLAD grant. We anticipate hopefully closing this grant out and getting the $300,000 in revenue from the grant. Our portion of the grant is being paid for by the TIF funds for the development of the park. So we have to cover our half plus what we went over on. And we have some remaining amount of the OSLAG grant, in addition to potentially building a tunnel through the Celebration of Lights, budgeted for under the Rotary Park development expense, which makes up the $285,000. I believe close to $250,000 worth of expenses to close out the grant are in there, in addition to what we're hoping to maybe potentially put some sort of tunnel in through the park. The 2010 G&O recovery bond is one of the last bonds that we're paying for. How we pay for that is a bond has to have its own fund. This is its own fund. We transfer money in from the general fund, and then we have a principal payment and interest payment. The interest payment, we get half of that back at the time that we took out this bond in 2010. So once this bond is paid off, I believe it'll be the last bond that we have on the books. We do have EPA loans on the books, but we don't have any more bonds on the books. The water fund and wastewater fund have already been covered. In between that, I guess you'll find the parking fund, which is Fund 53. The parking fund is pretty consistent with last year, where we bring in some revenue from parking fees and from the state's attorney's office, and we pay for our meter read person. That's the $9,000 regular salaries that was budgeted for. Last year he came in at $8,128. We do have a potential $20,000 capital improvement in there. I think we budgeted for it last year as well, where we added some cameras to some of the parking lots and so forth, just as a matter of safety and security throughout the city. Following the parking fund, we already talked about wastewater. So getting into the TIFs. The TIFs are very incomplete because we don't have any of the revenue amounts yet from the county to the TIF administrator and the TIF administrator to us. So they're somewhere in that process. We will get these budgets. So I don't have the revenues budgeted for. I am going to go through each TIF. There are a couple TIF related expenses that we're planning for. So I will cover those quickly here before we conclude. In TIF 1, I have $250,000 budgeted in capital improvements. Of that, $25,000 is for the Oak Ridge Drive. $100,000 is for Cannon Parkway. And then we have some leftover from last year's projects that we anticipate being billed for as well. And if you want to know what any of those are specifically, Brian is here and would know what those, can speak to those. Also, you'll notice the transfer to Rotary Park, that $400,000, that's to cover the OSLIG grant. That's the very last expense that I have on there. TIF 3, we don't have anything to discuss tonight. We don't have the revenues. And then the only thing that we're anticipating in TIF 3 is the intergovernmental agreements with the schools to be reimbursed. So no capital improvement projects there. Same with TIF 4. At this time, we don't have anything forecasted in TIF 4 other than the IGAs with schools and also any developer reimbursements that are eligible. Same with, well, not the same with TIF 5. TIF 5 is mostly where we do a lot of work in the TIFs from. That's our downtown TIF. So in TIF 5, I'm anticipating $880,000 in capital improvement projects. 60,000 of that in road work in TIF 5, $75,000 in sidewalks, $100,000 in the safe routes overage. So anything that's over the amount of the grant is being paid for out of this TIF because these must be sidewalks that are in the downtown, Brian?
Yeah, it's the 2nd Street from Hennepin to Union. That falls within the safe routes to schools, and that's part of the TIF.
And then I have some Buckland Street at $25,000, and then First Street reconstruction at $620,000. So the First Street reconstruction is the dinosaur of the 880. You want to chat on that at all, Brian?
We're working at. We have water main issues, so that's one of our replacements, and so I've kind of pushed First Street off until we get that water main replacement done. We're hoping to have that done either this fall or in the spring, and then the road work will follow right after. So I'm anticipating this budget year. I'm hoping we can do it, but it depends when we get the next water loan with forgiveness is going to involve some water main replacements. So that's part of that. And I don't want to do the roadway until we make sure the sewer is in good shape and the water is in good shape. Water main is replaced.
TIF 6, nothing anticipated except for the intergovernmental agreements and refunds. TIF 7, same. And then TIF 8, I did budget $250,000 in capital improvement projects. Of that, $25,000 for the Public Works garage entrance. Paving that, it's rock on the way in now, I believe. Civic and Charters has some repairs to be done. And then I guess I put this in here twice, budget for if we did something with a Public Works purchase of that building, we could technically transfer it from this TIF. So that is where the budget stands in its current form. Again, this is a draft. This is incomplete. By the time it's set for final vote, it will be complete. Again, any ideas you have as elected officials, you have obviously some time to think about or discuss. I think we can figure out the best way to tackle some of these things. If you do have things you want to bring up, at some point by the first meeting in July, we need to approve the appropriations ordinance. So I'd like to have that closer to the second meeting in June, rather than wait till that last meeting. So if there are things that you would like to discuss and debate, I would suggest that we talk about those at next week's finance committee meeting after you've had a week to think about it and get any input that you have from your constituents, or if there's anything that I've forgotten about or left out, please bring that to my attention so I can plug that in as well. Anybody have any questions for me from the?
John, you mentioned in the Rotary Park part, a tunnel. What are you referring to?
So I believe they're looking into fabricating a tunnel that when you go through the lights, you would go through a tunnel of lights.
Oh. Okay.
Not digging anything.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be over the ground and some sort of light tunnel.
That would be up all the time. It's not something that we would take down, from my understanding.
And where is the plan to put this?
I'm not exactly sure, but I believe it's in the stretch at the bottom of the hill. After you come down the hill,
Okay.
and you go towards the wastewater plant. I believe it's somewhere in that stretch. We have power there. It can, I'm not working on that, but it is something.
We're not digging, Tom. Yeah, it's my understanding as well.
Thank you.
And like always, I'm in my office. And anybody has any questions on any of my stuff, feel free to come up or call.
Any more questions? I'd like to take a second to thank Finance Director Duncan for his time and his presentation here today, and I believe we open up the floor to comments if there's no further questions. Public comment?
Just got a couple questions. And maybe since you're here, Brian, you could explain this to me. Safe routes to school. Last year, 2nd Street sidewalks were quoted in the meetings, and we allocated money to repair sidewalks with Safe to School grant money. I have a FOIA that I put in with Brent. I'm trying to figure all this out. This grant goes back to 2018. You can't tell me that this grant for $200,000 is still going on in 2025. We spent the $200,000 on Safe Routes to School grants. That first round, we had to. It's in the audits. It's in the minutes. So I don't know where you came up saying that we didn't spend any of that money. Maybe not this round, but the last round we did. We spent it on around the school for handicap entranceways. It was coordinated with the school. They've already got all the plans made out. It's been made since 2018. It had to have been coordinated with the school, with the people that lived in the area. The plans are already made. Nothing's been done. Money's gone. Another question.
Would you like me to respond to that?
I really would, yes.
Not during the public comment, because I'm timing it.
Okay.
You're timing me. This is a public meeting, not a city meeting. This is a public hearing.
3 minutes.
All right. LPAC. Every one of you are guilty. Every one of you can go to jail. Do you know what you're doing when you're taking this man who is signing the checks, him and Mayor Grove, who's also on committees? It's illegal, people. And if you don't believe me, you can go right ahead, Mr. 3-Minute Man, and you can go ahead and ask your daddy, the attorney. Let's see. Last year we gave him $310,000. You guys allocated and gave it to the city. Where is it? Your numbers don't add up there, Johnny. Over $270,000 the year before. Your numbers you got on here, I hope you remember you've got paperwork that backs this up, because I'm pretty good with my eyes and I see a lot of numbers that ain't adding up to what they used to add up to. But your LPAC committee will end up with all of your asses in jail. Felony charges, you're taking money. I will go straight to the FBI. So I hope you got connects that run that goddamn deep, because I know your guys' connections are real, real deep. My 3 minutes.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you, John.
Anyone else like to do a public comment today?
You can't time somebody in a public hearing.
Sir, this is not a public hearing. This is a finance meeting.
A finance meeting. Then you have it on Monday night when you usually have it.
It's going to be a longer meeting, so they wanted to have a different date set for it.
Keep filing my complaints, because what you guys keep doing to me when you let other people talk.
Hey, Jamie, that's enough.
Yeah, okay. You fucking guys are a joke.
Motion for adjournment?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Push the buttons, guys. Push my buttons. Keep fucking doing it. Smile there, Jefferson. Keep smiling.